Treasurer Jim Chalmers has hinted at reining in tax breaks for superannuation balances over $3 million in the May budget, while assuring the vast bulk of savers of no change to concessional tax rates, including for incomes up to $250,000. After raising the specter of widespread changes to superannuation tax concessions to keep the system sustainable, the Treasurer moved to ease fears. At the same time, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese assured there would be no significant change come the May budget. The government moved to calm fears as opposition leader Peter Dutton said he would campaign on Labour's superannuation tax plans ahead of the Aston by-election on April 1. It's no coincidence that the government has decided to hold this by-election early before the May budget, he said. Clearly Labour is going to walk away from their Stage 3 tax cuts, which is going to make it harder for Aston families, and clearly there is an attack on superannuation. After letting debate run for 2 days, Dr. Chalmers stressed the only plan under consideration was to cap super fund balances. He told Radio 2GB the government was not considering either a higher tax rate on contributions or earnings. "I haven't been considering that. It's not on the table," he said. Asked about possible changes to Division 293, which is the extra tax for higher earners, Dr. Chalmers said, "That's not something that we've been proposing or considering either." Division 293 doubles the contribution tax rate to 30%, if adjusted taxable income, including concessional contributions to super, exceeds $250,000. The tax is charged on contributions above that threshold. The Prime Minister also moved to calm speculation. "We said during the election campaign that we did not intend to make big changes to superannuation. And we don't," he said. But Dr. Chalmers suggested the government was looking at a $3 million cap, a change that would affect around 36,000 people and save the budget $1 billion annually. Asked about the Grattan Institute's proposal to impose a levy on super balances over $2 million, Dr. Chalmers said he had a slightly different example. "If you think about the average balance in super is about $150,000, $150,000, I think, but for less than 1% of people in the system, they've got balances higher than $3 million. The average among that group is $5.8 million, he said. They have access to a whole bunch of tax concessions, and I think the point that Grattan has made repeatedly over a period of time is we've got to work out where we get the most value for money when it comes to some of these tax concessions." Mr. Albanese gave the same example. Dr. Chalmers said the almost $50 billion annual cost for tax concessions on super were not cheap. "We can't ignore the cost of these tax concessions with all of the other pressures which are on the budget," he said. Dr. Chalmers said the government would not be removing rules allowing fund members to access their retirement savings early if they met hardship criteria. According to the Grattan Institute, which advocates taxing earnings on balances above $2 million in super funds at 30% or more instead of imposing a hard cap, introducing such a policy for balances over $3 million would save the federal government around $1 billion. In the 2019 to 2020 financial year, there were around 36,000 people with balances over $3 million, holding nearly $200 billion in assets. Unnecessary way to deal with a legacy issue. The bulk of superannuation funds with balances this large are in the self-managed sector, prompting SMSF Association CEO John Moroney to slam suggestions of a $3 million cap on Wednesday. Mr. Moroney said that any cap was an unnecessary way to deal with a legacy issue around large fund balances, pointing to the existing transfer balance cap as a way of already managing the problem. "We certainly like the idea of having an objective to support having stability going forward, but we don't think it should be a smokescreen for changing taxes or laws, especially as Labour said before the election that they wouldn't make major changes," he said. Introducing a cap now would undermine members' confidence to invest more money in their superannuation, he warned, and would lead to people taking money out of their accounts and putting it in lower-yielding assets instead. "There's also a risk once a cap is in there it can either stay fixed or get reduced, and every step you go lower, it's going to bring in more, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, and that's going to get more people concerned," he added. Retail supergiant Mercer is one of the only funds to call for a cap below $5 million, recommending a limit on balances of $3.4 million, or twice the transfer balance cap. David Knox, a senior partner at the fund, said that superannuation balances around this level or the $3 million suggested by Dr. Chalmers were ample to provide appropriate levels of retirement income for members. But he warned that there were so few funds with balances at this level that limiting tax concessions on them was unlikely to lead to significant revenue for the government. "We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of people here, we're talking about tens of thousands. So while it's important to make the system fairer or more equitable, these measures are not going to fill the budget hole. It's important to do, but it's not a big revenue game." Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor said low tax rates were part of the trade-off which forced people to quarantine income until retirement. "It is also critical that changes are predictable, certain, and consistent with election promises," he said. "These are long-term investments, and shifting the goalposts in ways that take away from super, rather than add to it, leaves Australian retirees in the cold." Data shows that 80% of people watching my videos are not subscribed. Remember, subscribing is free, it only takes a couple of seconds and you can unsubscribe at any time. Please help me and my channel by subscribing.